Oh, what's this?
This is the final footage, filmed by a medic in Gaza, gunned down and killed by Israeli forces on March 23rd, along with more than a dozen of his colleagues. They were on their way to help another emergency crew wounded in an earlier Israeli attack.
I'm moving to the UK. How racist is it over there? You have a worse time because you're American than because you're black. Frankly. That's probably going to be the bigger issue.
The man who filmed the video was Rifat Radwan. His body was found in a shallow grave. His phone, with the footage detailing the last minutes of his life, was still in his pocket. And that footage has blown up the IDF's initial narrative about the killings. Alongside Rifat's corpse were not only 14 of his colleagues, but also the
Yeah, if you can start talking like drill rappers, you might be fine. Okay, if you just move to London, talk like drill rappers, everything will be totally fine. If you're talking like an American, that's going to be a problem pretty much no matter where you are in the country.
Wreckage of the emergency vehicles they were traveling in.
So many questions we are asking the Israelis. Why they were killed? They were wearing negatives. The lights were on.
The world wants answers. What exactly happened here, and will anyone be held accountable?
We have nothing to hide whatsoever.
Using visual evidence, audio analysis, satellite imagery, and our interviews with family members, a survivor, colleagues, doctors, and forensic specialists, we've pieced together a detailed timeline of what happened.
Okay, let's pay attention here. Okay, so what's Israel's claim?
The world wants answers. What exactly happened here, and will anyone be held accountable?
We have nothing to hide whatsoever.
Using visual evidence, audio analysis, satellite imagery, and our interviews with family members, a survivor, colleagues, doctors, and forensic specialists, we've pieced together a detailed timeline of what happened on the morning of March 23rd. From 3:52 when the first ambulance was dispatched, onto 5:08 when the attack began, and then 7:25 when the last of the communication with first responders was lost. It all builds a clearer picture of the Israeli military's targeting and burial of what was clearly marked emergency vehicles.
إنك رفعت إخواتك كلهم طلعت عليهم وابتسم في وجهي وابتسم في وجههم وطلع. هذا آخر شفتنا لهم وما شاء الله عليه يعني.
Rifat's parents live among the tents of Gaza, one family amongst the hundreds of thousands displaced by the war, now also grieving the loss of their son.
ولا زكي على الله أحد بس رفعت كتير انظلم هو وزملائه لأنه رايح يقدم خدمة إنسانية ما راحش لإشي.
Rifat was a paramedic with the Palestinian Red Crescent Society, or PRCS. He was part of a group of 8 Red Crescent paramedics, 6 first responders from Gaza's civil defense, and 1 UN worker, all on a rescue mission to find a missing ambulance crew that they'd lost contact with. In total, 17 people were involved. None were armed. All their families vehemently denied they were anything other than emergency volunteers. One of the first responders in the group, Asad al-Nusra, is still being held by Israeli authorities without any explanation about why, no charges levelled against him, and no access allowed to him. Munzer Abed, a Red Crescent worker, is the only other survivor. He was released from Israeli detention about 15 hours after the incident. He was in the very first ambulance to come under attack, as he and 2 colleagues were racing to the scene of a bombing in Rafah.
فكانت وظيفتي الأساسية في الكابينة في خلف السيارة. كنت أقعد يعني في الكرسي اللي ورا في سيارة الإسعاف، وكنت مجهز حالي طبعا لابس الجلافز ومجهز السيارة إنه أتعامل مع إصابات يعني. بس أنا بقدر أقول لك إنه الفجريات. فصار إطلاق نار كثيف جدا بشكل مباشر علينا على السيارة. وطبعا أنا فترة إطلاق النار انبطحت في السيارة من الخلف. انبطحت جنب الحمالة مباشرة. وما سمعتش من زمايلي نهائيا ولا كلمة ولا أي حرف غير اللي سمعتهم الأنفاس الأخيرة زي ما بقولوا شاقة الموت
The 2 colleagues he was with were killed, but somehow Munzer survived. He says Israeli soldiers pulled him out of the back of the ambulance, stripped him to his underwear and held him for hours. Before being released, he witnessed soldiers digging a grave and burying the vehicles. Rifat's video is the most significant account of the morning's events. We've picked it up at 4:55, when more Red Crescent workers are dispatched to find out what's happened to Munzer's ambulance crew, which had suddenly broken off contact. We hear the conversation already getting tense. After analysing the footage, Sky News has geolocated the exact route the ambulance took. We tracked the team, making
Why are we watching this? Because vaguely interesting.
its way through the dark and see about
It's a story that's been going on for a while about this this medic van that got fucking turned to Swiss cheese by the IDF.
6 minutes into the video, how they drive right past the missing vehicle they've been looking for without spotting it. We've brightened the exposure to highlight the white vehicle more clearly. Markings on the van aren't clear from the footage, but we matched the shape, size and model of the vehicle to other emergency vehicles used in Gaza. Further down the road, they meet a colleague in an oncoming emergency vehicle who tells them
Bro,
the ambulance...
bitch, just go, have a drink. have a swig of water. What's the fucking problem?
The ambulance crew they're looking for is behind.
The ambulance crew they're looking for. Okay.
صالح السيارة ورا؟ يا راجل استنى بدنا نستنى كمان سيارات. هاي سيارة بهلول جاية.
So they turn around and retrace their steps. On the way, they meet up with other crews, also dispatched to find their missing colleagues, and altogether the convoy continues until they reach the white emergency vehicle that's crashed on the side of the road. They stop, get out to investigate. Then at 5:08 in the morning, the shooting begins. The sound of gunfire goes on for more than 5 minutes. We can hear Rifat reciting the Shahada, a Muslim declaration of faith, often uttered in the moments before death.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد تقبلني شهيدا يا الله.
Also among his final words.
Yeah, this is the Red Crescent ambulances, and I think there was a UN aid worker with them.
To his mother.
يما سامحيني يما. هذه هي الطريقة اللي اخترتها يما.
I wasn't ranting at people who go out of their way to research this topic. This was a type of research that I was saying they should do. What I'm saying people shouldn't do is listen to, like, the fucking Israeli call-ins where they're screaming and crying about how their family's been kidnapped, or videos of children getting fucking domed. Like Twitter videos and anecdotes and shit like that. If there's, like, a good piece of reporting that lays out, like, you know, a skirmish that happened, or an analysis of an attack, that's good. That's good stuff. Bad stuff is just endlessly pumping, like, war porn, like, gore, death and destruction, just like all that shit into your algorithm, and just following that all day. Yeah, that's gonna fry your fucking brain. You're gonna get really emotional about it. It's gonna fry your fucking brain. Your judgment's gonna be terrible. Your opinions are gonna suck.
نساعد الناس. سامحيني يما سامحيني. والله ما قبلت هذا الطريق إلا لساعد الناس. يا رب تب علي. يا رب من كتبتني من الشهداء تقبلني.
The attack doesn't end there. Sky News also obtained an audio clip from another paramedic, Ashraf Abu Labda, who was in a different vehicle. This is the first time this audio is being broadcast. Ashraf called the dispatch centre for help at 5:13. In the audio, we can hear the shooting continue, and he appears close enough to see the Israeli troops. At the end of the clip, We were able to make out some Hebrew, suggesting the Israeli forces were much closer than admitted by the Israeli authorities. Only after the emergence of
I think
Rifat's
that's
footage,
cope, Chris. It's not people thought they have to bear witness. It's just like pure. They're getting like hooked by the algorithms. It's not like some ascended. I have to see what's happening. I have to put myself as witness to the crimes that I'm funding. No, it's you go on TikTok and it starts showing you babies getting charred. It makes you feel a certain way. You're like, oh my god. Makes you feel a certain way, and you keep watching, and then it shows you another one, and then it shows you another one, it shows you another one, and you're just down the rabbit hole. You're just on the treadmill of social media algorithms. There's no ascended like, oh, I have to see this. You're just like impulsive and getting baited.
did the IDF backtrack on their initial narrative, a changing Israeli account which provided a number of mostly implausible explanations. They first claimed a drone operator had spotted the convoy as moving suspiciously, but haven't outlined why. They said the convoy wasn't using headlights or flashing emergency signals, and it had not cleared the route with the Israeli military. The video clearly shows that wasn't the case. All vehicles in the footage do have their lights on. The vehicles are marked with internationally recognized humanitarian signs, and the crews are wearing reflective gear. It seems inconceivable that anyone could not have noticed the convoy lights in the pitch dark of Gaza. A spokesperson for the IDF justified the decision to open fire by saying that the vehicle's movements were not approved in advance by the IDF. But the senior Red Crescent officials told us the area the emergency vehicles were dispatched to was outside the Red Combat Zone at the time, so their mission didn't require any military clearance or coordination. Sky News established that a new evacuation order for the area, shown in yellow here, was only issued at 8:31 a.m. This is the map provided by the IDF themselves, almost 3.5 hours after the attack on Rifat's convoy.
The Israeli military has now admitted to shooting the medical workers, all of whom were unarmed, but they have yet to provide any evidence for their claim that Hamas militants were among those killed. Initially, they said 9 of the rescue workers were militants. About a week later, the IDF revised the number of militants down to 6. But again, they haven't yet provided any information about how they knew that Hamas militants had buried themselves and hidden themselves amongst the paramedics. Sky News has also investigated the social media accounts of all the paramedics involved, and none of them show any obvious affiliation with Hamas. So we asked the Israeli government directly about their claims.
Were they identified as Hamas, these 6 Hamas you've identified? Were they identified before these troops opened fire or after?
So that's why Hamas themselves use ambulances to hide their identity.
Right.
While
So
our
it was
soldiers,
after. So it was after.
No, while our soldiers stake out Hamas terror squads, Hamas hides behind civilians and then cries foul when terrorists are targeted. Mark, Israel doesn't fear the truth. That's why we are investigating this incident extremely thoroughly. Can Hamas say the same? Hamas violates every principle of international law. They hide in hospitals, in mosques, in schools, and then they blame us when war crimes blow up in their own faces.
Okay. Dude, the propaganda, when you hear these Israeli people talk about it, it's fucking annoying, isn't it? I understand how people get so pissed off. Because it's like, it's not about it blowing up in Hamas's face. Yeah, no one fucking likes Hamas, dude. No one in the West is like, I mean, obviously some people will, but broadly, no one's like, yeah, Hamas is fucking epic. Obviously some retards are like that. No one broadly is like that. So it's not about it blowing up in Hamas's face. It's about, did you have justification to strike here? Did you have good reason and good military justification for the level of collateral damage that occurred? And if you're saying, basically we didn't even know until after we started shooting the ambulances that the people in there were Hamas, well then you didn't have justification. Even if you end up getting it right, you didn't have justification to fire on a fucking ambulance. So the excuse you're coming up with here doesn't even address the point.
Mark, Israel doesn't fear the truth. That's why we are investigating this incident extremely thoroughly. Can Hamas say the same? Hamas violates every principle of international law. They hide in hospitals, in mosques, in schools, and then they blame us when war crimes blow up in their own faces.
The IDF has said that their initial investigation showed that there was no firing from close distance during the incident, but our audio analysis paints a starkly different picture.
We worked with independent audio forensic experts to analyse the gunfire in the video. Using the time lag between the sound of the bullet and the gun firing, they were able to calculate that the initial gunshots were fired from approximately 50 metres away. The Israeli military has not said any of their forces came under any return fire. By the end of the recording, the analysis tells us that the gunshots were fired from as close as 12 to 18 metres, which suggests the IDF soldiers were closing in. Altogether, the shooting lasted more than 5 minutes. The audio experts confirmed to Sky News that well over 100 rounds were fired in that time.
Dude.
Doctors who reviewed the dead bodies after the attack told us that some individuals had more than 20 gunshot wounds, many to the upper body and head. Sky News spoke to the forensic pathologist who performed the
It's just so crazy. It's like unarmed, no claim of return fire, no recording of return fire. 20 bullets in each corpse.
bodies, and he told us about the injuries he saw.
بالنسبة للإصابات تتراوح ما بين إصابات بأعير نارية وإصابات نتيجة شظايا انفجارية. الأماكن في الرأس، العنق، الجذع أو التورسو، سواء البطن، الظهر، الصدر، البطن، الظهر، وطبعا المفاصل. في
Loser Box defended this. Please find me the most recent version of Loner Box talking about this, and I will watch it. I want to hear the argument. I want to hear the other side. Has anyone got that? Can anyone find that for me?
والأكتاف.
Using satellite imagery and video analysis, we were able to recreate the scene of the attack. That's allowed us to plot the positions of each emergency vehicle when the attack began at 5:08. The vehicle that first went missing, Rifat's ambulance, and the others that came.
We had to make them. The Hamas is going to Muslim hell.
To help. Satellite imagery taken at 10:48 the same morning shows that within hours, the IDF had gathered 5 of the vehicles together on the side of the road and set up roadblocks to the north and south. At least 9 IDF vehicles are visible in the area, including what looks like tanks and bulldozers. Satellite imagery taken 2 days later, on the 25th of March at 10:36, shows that the vehicles have been buried beneath a mound of sand. This means that they must have been crushed after being moved to the side of the road.
we had to put the pig's blood on the bullets.
This contradicts the IDF's initial claim that the vehicles were damaged by a large engineering tool as they were moving vehicles off the road. And it corroborates what survivor Munza told us about what the military did after the attack.
فكان متبقي بواقي من سيارات الإسعاف عجلين، لأنه إحنا سيارات إسعاف فاتنا طبقوهن كلهن في الكباش.
We arrived at the site where the ambulances were hit.
The IDF also refused to allow rescue teams to access the site of the attack for at least 5 days because of what they called operational activity. When the rescue teams could finally access the area, they were filmed digging mangled vehicles and dead bodies out of sand piles and placing them in white bags to be transferred to the mortuary.
They were here to save lives. Instead, they ended up in a mass grave. Their vehicles, their ambulances, UN vehicles, civil defense vehicles are crushed and dumped, covered in sand next to us. It's an absolute horror. What has happened here?
Amongst the claims Sky News heard from medics and civil defence workers has been that at least one of the bodies had their hands and feet bound together. Photos and videos obtained by Sky News appear to show the recovered bodies, their Red Crescent logo on the arm of the uniform. But there is no clear evidence of handcuffs or legs tied together. Sources at PRCS and Civil Defence told us that these white tags and ties are commonly used by emergency workers to identify bodies.
لكن ما شفناش أدوات ربط وإن كان في حالة.
So okay. So who was there someone claiming they were restrained?
Activity.
الكباش.
The Munza told us about what the military did after the attack.
فكان متبقي بواقي من سيارات الإسعاف عجلين، لأنه إحنا سيارات إسعاف فاتنا طبقوهن كلهن في الكباش.
We arrived at the site where the ambulances were hit.
IDF. So Loner Box. You were someone. Like, Nina said Loner Box was defending this. He's not.
Fairly disturbing. Very shortly after that claim came out, a medic who was a survivor, lights off. That was the first claim that was given. It seems to be that claim was given from the soldiers and passed on to their superiors, and that's what the superiors reported. Very shortly after that claim came out, a medic who was a survivor of this attack claimed that the lights were on, that they were unarmed, and that as soon as they got out, they were just fired upon for about 5 minutes. There were also stories about him being brutally interrogated, beaten. Maybe some people were tied up, although I don't think we've seen visual evidence of that. In any case, the 15 people who died were buried by the IDF in a shallow ditch and covered with sand, which I didn't actually know. But that's actually, it's disturbing as it sounds. Apparently that's IDF protocol. The reason that they do that, according to them, is that there's a whole issue now of loads of stray dogs running around Gaza. You can guess why. And apparently there's a risk of those stray dogs eating the corpses. So in order to preserve the corpses, they covered them with a thin layer of sand, put them into a ditch, and then gave the coordinates to the UN. And then that's how the UN went and found them to bury them, to dig them out and identify them. So yeah, but fairly disturbing story. Do we believe them? What is protocol to do that? I mean, it seems like it would make sense to be the protocol, because if they wanted to hide the bodies, why would they tell the UN where they are? I don't know. It seems like they were okay with the UN finding the bodies, but the problem is that, first of all, the IDF said that 9 people who died were Hamas militants. They have since revised that number down to 6, and there's a huge discrepancy here. The biggest one so far being that the aid workers, apparently, they claimed their lights were on, and they were just driving normally towards somewhere that they thought a warning that people had.
I mean, even if you say that's not protocol, which, I mean, you've got no reason to think that's not protocol. If that's something they're saying is protocol, then that sounds reasonable. But what you're saying is true. Why would, if they were actually trying to hide the body, why would they give bodies? Why would they give the coordinates? This isn't. Also, he hasn't made it up. This is being reported. You can literally go look at it. I literally just googled this. It's in the articles about this ambulance tech, saying that that's what the IDF are saying, is that is protocol right now to bury the bodies because of stray dogs and shit. That they hand over the coordinates. So I mean, you can say that's made up. If it's made up, it's made up by Israel. It's not made up by Loner Box. He's just relaying what they say their protocol is.
Died or were injured, but a video surfaced after the IDF made that claim, showing the lights are clearly on and they're just driving quite normally down the road. So there's the vehicles 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, we only really have IDF information mostly on what this van is, or at least their story. So this is very enough for work even to listen. This is New York Times. This is the short version. But yes, these are the 2 vehicles, the 3 vehicles, and then the one behind them. Reflective gear, so it's very clearly identifiable. It's dark as well, so they're talking about people who are lying around, scattered everywhere. I think the IDF posted another response saying the previous claim was based on soldier testimonies. Yeah, so what would happen is a soldier would have lied to the IDF spokespersons or their superiors, and then they would have, that's the message that got to the media. So yeah, it seems like the people who actually did this massacre were the ones who lied to the IDF, and then the IDF passed that lie on without checking it to the public. So this van, we'll talk about this one in a minute. And there are shots, and then the guy starts praying, and there's gunshots. There's a full video that lasts about 5 minutes, 6 minutes. Okay, but it's 5 more minutes of just that. The gunshots last for a really, really, really long time. So he's saying the Shahada, yes. Okay, so the story about this van, I think it's maybe still mixed, but let me find it. It's the closest you can get to it. The story about this van is that the IDF so far have released a preliminary statement. Right now, this incident has actually been passed on to the separate investigatory mechanism of the force, the same mechanism that actually investigated the WCK bombings. So it's right now in the hands of the same people that investigated that. I think that investigation opened 2 days ago, and they took 5 days, I think, last time, wasn't it? It was about 5 days for them to come up with their final findings. So there's one survivor from this convoy of 15 people. The IDF story about this van here, and it's reported by, this is Manny Fabian, who was from he's a Times of Israel military correspondent. So their story is that they set up an ambush along this road from the Golani Brigade, 14th Armored Brigade. They set up the
okay, but Nina, I'm not gonna lie. Your idea of critical thinking is saying, well, it must be a lie because Israel's saying it. That's your idea of critical thinking, so I don't take that very seriously, to be honest.
4 a.m. It's not PM. They set up the ambush in the next...
Breaking news, Shad Logic to join the British Transport Police.
Thank you for the $5, thank you.
After half an hour, a bunch of ambulances and civilians, they pass by this ambush, nothing happens. That's their story. At 4:30, this, which is apparently a Hamas police vehicle, this one here, comes to the area. They exchange fire with the Golani soldiers. They kill one, and the IDF kills one of them and captures 2 others. And then that vehicle remains on the side of the road. Yeah, the flub is PM, it's not AM, yeah. No, yeah, it is AM, but he said PM, yeah. So that's supposedly the Hamas police vehicle that returned fire on the Golani soldiers. No, Golani Brigade is just a brigade in the IDF. That's what they are, okay. Then it's 6 a.m., so an hour and a half after this vehicle swerves off the road, this is when the convoy comes. So you can see it's pretty dark, it's like almost sunrise, but 6 a.m. the convoy of ambulances arrived in the area, and the soldiers opened fire thinking they were a threat. Drone operators flying a UAV overhead had reported to Golani soldiers that the vehicles were moving toward them in a suspicious manner. The initial investigation claims that the soldiers were surprised by the convoy stopping on the road next to the abandoned Hamas vehicle, and several suspects getting out quickly and running. The soldiers were unaware that the suspects were in fact unarmed medics. Now, again, the soldiers don't really have much of an excuse for this because they seem to have lied about the sirens, and the medics are in high vis. The IDF acknowledges that its statement claiming that the ambulances had their lights off was incorrect and was based on the testimony from soldiers in the incident. Video footage published by the New York Times today showed that the ambulances were clearly identifiable and had their lights on. The investigation is looking into this discrepancy. The IDF has also found that at least 6 of the 15 slain medics were immediately identified by intelligence officials as Hamas operatives. So they initially said 9, but this is since like a preliminary investigation where they said there were 6. The reason that that's 6, I don't know if it's been responded to yet.
Well, did Israel tell the truth here? Well, it depends what you mean by Israel. There are different people in Israel that say different things at different times. That the IDF relayed what the soldiers claimed was the case. So the soldiers lied, yes. And at minimum, Israel were wrong about the number of Hamas operatives there. At minimum, they were wrong. Now, they could be completely lying. In fact, I would say, it's very suspicious that you start off with 9 Hamas operatives, and now you've got 6. I would be interested to know how many you end up with and what the evidence is. And that would seem like a lie if it turns out there actually isn't any. But simply relaying that, Israel are handing off this situation to this investigative branch of the military to come up with findings. That's not something that requires you going, Israel always lies. That's not required there. No, they are. There's an investigation happening, and then once the investigation finishes, you can look at it and go, I think Israel investigated that fairly and came to a reasonable conclusion. Or you can go, I think Israel are lying here, and here's why. But just relaying that there's an investigation happening with a branch of the Israeli military, that doesn't require you going, Israel's lying.
My guess is that the 6 is coming from not the Red Crescent vehicle, but from the other one. Red Crescent. What's the Red Crescent vehicle? The other one that was with them. There's the other institution that was with them. It wasn't just Red Crescent. It was also. Does anyone know the one that's actually government affiliated? What are they called? The emergency services, like the firefighters, not the UN. Civil services, is that what they're called? Civil defense. Civil defense, I believe, is either affiliated with Hamas or they're just like an arm of the government. But I don't know if civil defense actually integrates with the soldiers at all. The police does, but I don't know if civil defense does. In any case. According to the initial probe, the shooting did not take place at a close range, and the troops did not carry out any executions. After the deadly gunfire, a deputy battalion commander in Golani with his troops collected the bodies into one spot, covered them with sand, and marked the burial spot. The military says burying bodies is an approved and regular practice during the fighting in Gaza to prevent wild dogs and other animals from eating the corpses. The IDF then notified the UN of the burial spot for them to come collect them. The following day, the UN was unable to find the location, and the forces were meanwhile busy with other tasks. The UN was then called to return several days later to collect the bodies, and eventually they were recovered in coordination with the IDF. So they eventually find the bodies, and then this is where the stories come in. So the summary is that Hamas made an ambush in the IDF. No, no. The story here is that the IDF had this ambush set up in this area. They apparently allowed medics and other vehicles to go through, but then half an hour after the ambush was set up, this vehicle here, that we're still trying to figure out, we don't even know much about this one, was supposedly a Hamas vehicle. They pulled over, returned fire on the ambush, and 1 died and 2 were captured. An hour and a half later, this medical convoy comes with their lights on in their high vis, supposedly responding to a call about this. Maybe someone saw this and called it, and there might be people lying down or injured or killed. So they respond to this, they come out, and they get fired on for 5 minutes with the lights on and the high vis, and then they're buried. So, I mean, given the fact that if it's the soldiers who actually lied about the lights, that just sounds like they just committed a massacre. Like they just murdered aid workers for no reason. That's like the best explanation so far, incidentally based on the IDF's probe. Because if the IDF's probe is saying that the soldiers lied to them about the vehicles first moving suspiciously, then not having their lights on, if that's actually true that the soldiers said that to the IDF, and the IDF isn't just trying to cover for them, then it means the soldiers were just lying to cover up what they did, because they knew what they did was not good, you would say. Even if they positively identified 6 Hamas members among the medics, even that wouldn't make sense in this context, because the soldiers who were firing on them wouldn't have been identifying them, and the soldiers who were firing on them also, their reason for suspecting these guys turned out not to be true. So even if it was 6 Hamas members among these 15, how did the people who fired on them actually know that at the time? How do they know that? Because there's no evidence that they were fired back upon.
Well, they didn't actually. Well, obviously, dogs can fucking drag bodies out of an ambulance, but they probably just had them all stack the bodies in the ambulance and put the ambulance in a fucking hole and put a thin layer of sand over it. If they're trying to hide, Anina, answer this question very simply. They're trying to hide the ambulance. Why tell the UN about it and give the coordinates? Very simple question.
Despite what some people are trying to say. And there's also no evidence that their movements were suspicious. So the only hole there might be is if these guys were supposed to communicate with the IDF before responding to the scene. But even then, that's like a huge window of doubt. So even if they got lucky and killed 6 Hamas guys along with, I guess, 9 other medics, then that's just like, okay, you still... When we talk about war crimes or criminal activity in general, the criminal justice system bases its decisions on the state of mind of the killer. That's what we do, right? So if, for example, someone bombs a family home, but it's done because of false but credible enough intel that that family home was a military base because of like a misidentification or a bad informant or something like that, or there's like a sudden move at the end, that might not be criminal because you would just, if they could prove that they had good enough information at the time that would normally warrant a strike, then it would be an accident. However, if the opposite, if you kill like 10 people who are responding to a crime scene, like who are in medical gear, responding to a call, and it turns out that even all 10 of them were actually Hamas fighters who were just unarmed and multitasking as medical workers, then you've committed a crime because your state of mind is what matters. Your intent and the information that you had when you made the decision is what matters. So if these guys made the decision based on the fact that these guys were irregularly moving and also had sirens on, then it's like, but apparently they didn't. So that would still be criminal, even if everyone they killed was Hamas. You understand? Because based on how much information you're using and responding to at the time. So it's very unlikely there's any like way out of this. But people are trying to find them. Let's have a look.
Yeah, this is totally reasonable for Lonerbox. Totally reasonable from Lonerbox. Don't know what you were spazzing out about. Probably you just saw him covering this before, and because he didn't immediately assume that the IDF soldiers just massacred everyone in these ambulances, you're like, wow, he's doing Hasbara. Why is he doing Hasbara? Like a fucking idiot, didn't you? Like you got totally emotional about it. Like this is why I hate talking about this topic, because it is just the most retarded, dishonest people on both sides. You have Ethan Klein on one side, and then fucking bad empanada on the other. It's like, Jesus Christ, kill me now. Literally nothing wrong with what Lonerbox is saying there. You absolutely cannot stand to see evidence fairly evaluated.
The IDF also refused to allow rescue teams to access the site of the attack for at least 5 days because of what they called operational activity. When the rescue teams could finally access the area, they were filmed digging mangled vehicles and dead bodies out of sand piles and placing them in white bags to be transferred to the mortuary.
They were here to save lives. Instead, they ended up in a mass grave. Their vehicles, their ambulances, UN vehicles, civil defense vehicles are crushed and dumped, covered in sand next to us. It's an absolute horror. What has happened here?
Amongst the claims,
I don't think the language wasn't soft. He said that he thought the soldiers probably massacred those aid workers. He called it a massacre. He said, yeah, the soldiers lied. It seems like they probably massacred those aid workers. I think that was soft language at all.
News heard from medics and civil defence workers has been that at least one of the bodies had their hands and feet bound together. Photos and videos obtained by Sky News appear to show the recovered bodies, their Red Crescent logo on the arm of the uniform. But there is no clear evidence of handcuffs or legs tied together. Sources at PRCS and Civil Defence told us that these white tags and ties are commonly used by emergency workers to identify bodies.
لكن ما شفناش أدوات ربط وإن كان في حالة.
Kui's ability to be neutral and pragmatic is white tick mark emoji, L8R chat. Dono, before I go BC I watch too much of you Chud and Beckett and never Dono plus blockade APIs, sorry, folded hands emoji.
Thank you for the $5 space station, thank you.
على الرصغين في بعض التلونات قد تفيد بشغلة مثل هاي، لكن فيش عندي دليل دامغ على باقي الحالات بأنه في تقييد. والأمر الملفت للنظر أنه أنا
In the absence of any confirmation from the IDF, it's not clear exactly which of their forces were responsible for the shootings, nor where they were based. But Sky News has uncovered...
Dude, I referred to Carl Jobst as an incel at the start of my video on him because of the pickup artist stuff. I was just like joking. Someone commented, I am an ex-GF of Carl. It's one thing to say he scammed people or whatever, but I can guarantee you he is no incel. He usually has multiple relationships with women at the same time. Actually, I'd jump at the chance to meet him at our usual hotel one last time, TBH. Why don't you do some research before you spout off again? What? Huh? What? What a strange comment. Oh, wait, okay, what is this? I'm on this person's channel. Who is this person? Okay.
significant clues. Among footage published by the IDF themselves was this photo taken at approximately 6:45 a.m. Sky News located the building to this abandoned hospital. It's just 1 kilometre east of where the vehicles were attacked. And satellite imagery from the hours after the incident shows dozens of vehicle tracks are visible between the two locations. The IDF has not released details of the soldiers or their battalion involved, but it has said they belong to the elite Golani Brigade. This video, which emerged on the 4th of April, shows a Golani patrol commander speaking to his troops. We gave the Israeli military the right to reply, and they sent Sky News this response. The IDF is conducting an
What is the
patrol commander speaking.
Is there more of this?
זה מבצע להחזרת חטופים, גם אם לא הולכים ממש לפירו מבנה שנמצא בו חטוף. למה? מייצרים לחץ צבאי מאוד גדול, הורגים הרבה אויב, לוקחים לו המון שטח, וככה עד עכשיו חזרו חטופים. כל מי שפוגשים זה אויב. מזהים דמות, מפעילים אש, משמידים, מתקדמים הלאה. לא להתבלבל בהקשר הזה. תכלית המבצע.
I'm trying to find like any more information on this. There isn't really. Because he does say, the thing is that there is a part from his speech where he says, identify a threat, destroy it, and move on. So that like kind of lends some to like, he's not just saying massacre anyone you see. But like, it looks really bad. I would like to see like a bit more, like a recounting of the full thing, and maybe someone who speaks, I assume he's speaking Hebrew, I don't know. Like actually laying out what he's saying here. I don't trust just text on a screen, you know. I want to hear what he was saying and why, and a justification for how it reads in that context, you know.
To his troops.
כל מי שפוגשים זה אויב. מזהים דמות, מפעילים אש, משמידים, מתקדמים הלאה.
We gave the Israeli military the right to reply, and they sent Sky News this response. The IDF is conducting an inquiry into the incident. The preliminary inquiry indicated that the troops opened fire due to a perceived threat following a previous encounter in the area, and that 6 of the individuals killed in the incident were identified as Hamas terrorists. All the claims raised regarding the incident will be examined in a detailed and thorough manner for a decision on how to handle the event. Serious questions are now being asked in Israel by those at the very highest levels.
The story is more complicated than the original explanation made by the IDF. The original reaction by the Israeli army, the then subsequent corrections made, all points to something very, very disturbing.
The amount of evidence already gathered is unprecedented, especially...
Specific from a few different sources, the IDF declare a zone as no-go until soldiers treat anyone as a threat there. Yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense. He does say, don't get confused. I believe one of the lines he says in that speech is, don't get confused in this context. So, I mean, he could be saying, don't get confused. In this area, when we're here, don't even take a second to get confused. This is a kill zone. Anyone that's here is a threat.
Video footage that documents the events. And human rights lawyers say all this points to a grave violation of human rights and war crimes.
But the point is, this ambulance wasn't in the kill zone, was it? That there was an evacuation zone declared like 3 or 4 hours after the ambulance was already shot up. So
looks like a dreadful war crime. The availability of a bulldozer to bury the bodies of the 15 people and their vehicles, and the change of official accounts given by Israel, all of which points to cover-up, It's exactly what you would expect of any crime. Evidence of crime, and not the reaction of innocence, but the reaction of cover-up.
These scenes have become horrifyingly familiar over the past 18 months. The killing of medics in Israeli attacks has happened repeatedly. Rifat and his colleagues are among more than 400 aid workers who've been killed here since October the 7th. Hundreds of lives violently cut short in a war that the head of the ICRC believes will haunt us for a long time. All of them should have been protected under humanitarian law. Allahu Akbar! What sets their killings apart is their last moments were recorded on video. Now the UN, the EU, their families and colleagues want accountability and justice for their deaths, and answers from Israel about why they were killed. Alex Crawford, Sky News.
Wow. Well, yep, seems like those soldiers just fucking straight up killed those medics.